Do you all have your final exams with you? Except for Sylvie. Everyone else, do you have your final exam in front of you? You've already picked it up. Let's give them back because they want to check the dictation. Sorry. 1. Do you want to watch my mouth just in case? You still need some cues here. 1. Tick. 2. Tack. 3. Tuck. 4. Talk. 5. Took. 6. Tech. 7. Take. 8. Talk. 9. Toke. 10. Teak. Do you know what all the words mean? I'm guessing you don't know this one. This one means a drag on marijuana. 大麻烟吸了一口叫 toke. Isn't that a ridiculous word? Okay, a toke. And teak is yomu. Tech is short for technical. And those are not really correct spellings, but they're plausible, so those are okay too. And this is a 拟声字, tick-tock, the sound that a clock makes. Any questions? Does anybody want anything repeated? 还在念吗? Yes or no? No, we're done. Okay. So everything's in order now? Then you can give your exams back. Thank you. And do you all now have a copy of vowels and consonants? Everybody has a copy? No problems with that? Okay, and then I will collect your sums on Wednesday, and you should come to class prepared with what? Any questions that you have, right? And you know, what that leaves is our textbook. We're going to work hard on our textbook. So let's start. What? Excited? Okay. Last time we learned about what kinds of sounds? Ejectives, right. And I keep mentioning Georgia because I've been there and I am interested in the language and the country and the culture. But ejective also makes me think of another thing besides the way they pronounce certain words, the at, ap, ah. And that is my Georgian teacher. One of my Georgian teachers kept saying adjectives, adjectives, but it wasn't ejectives, it was adjectives. She was teaching us Georgian, and I kept hearing adjectives. I thought, we're not talking about phonetics here, we're talking about grammar, but she meant adjectives. In Taiwan, many people make the same mistake. They say adjectives instead of adjectives. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I'm just letting you know. Make sure you put the stress on the right word. You have to be polite to your teacher, but I couldn't take that one. It was confusing me. I said, excuse me, it's adjectives. Adjectives. Okay, so ejectives. Adjectives, ejectives, I think are both okay. And you may have noticed if you've been to our webpage that I've put up some Chinese translations for some of these terms. And most of these terms, I think a lot of the terms in the book I do know in Chinese, but some of them I don't. Or some of them I look them up and then I forget. And one reason I forget is because there's often not an established translation for a lot of these things. You find 7 different translations. And then you don't know which one to use, so you stick with the English because there's only one English, basically. Actually, there is more than one in English. You can call them glottalized consonants. You could also call them that. It's less precise, but they are sometimes simply called that. And you'll see that reflected in the Chinese here. So the Chinese, we often get many, and I didn't even put all of the ones up that I found. One of them says, for ejective, Y, 报音. Y is aggressive. And 报音 is just plosive. It's an aggressive plosive. So I don't think that one is really that specific. Another one is 紧喉音. And that means that you are making your throat very tight. So you have to make it tight in order to produce an ejective because your glottis, your vocal folds are coming together and they're going to make sure that no air comes out from the lungs and then push the air above them out. So 紧喉音 is another translation, and another one is 喷音, 喷音, 喷色的喷. And I can't say I like any of them. I guess 外报音 is the closest that we can get, 外报音, but it's not really that precise. So that's the problem with learning the Chinese for some of these. You can do some research on your own on Google, and most of the translations come from the PRC. You don't find as many from Taiwan. So anyway, 做参考. You can do some research yourself and see if you can find a better one that you are happier with. But that's what I found so far. And then for creaky voice, that's a fun translation. That's 吱嘎音，一个口，一个支持的支，然后一个口，一个右边是尴尬的尬的右边，吱嘎音。And the other ones we haven't really, breathy voice we haven't really covered yet. That's just 气音 or 气声音. And 爆音 and 爆发音for plosive. We talked about that before. Stop is 色音, plosive is 爆音. So that's the Chinese for a few of the terms that we've been running into. Let's continue from where we left off. Whose turn? Very good. Okay, and then tell us where we are in the book and start.
Page 139.
That's fine, but is it 100? Everybody listen carefully. Is it 100? Why? What's the difference?
No nasal.
Oh, there is a nasal. That's the point. How can we describe the difference? We should be able to describe things that we do in pronunciation, both the correct pronunciations and Taiwan English mistakes. 100, 100, what's the difference? In 100, can you describe the sound? 100. The vowel is nasalized, but the vowel is also nasalized in 100. 1. Because we have that rule we learned last semester. Before a nasal, any vowel gets nasalized. So if you say that alone, it's not quite enough. How can we describe it more precisely? 100. The vowel is longer, but we could go 100, and it's still not the same thing. It's very easy. Right. We have no contact with the alveolar ridge by the tip of the tongue. 舌头悬空. Right? So you didn't have alveolar contact with the tip of the tongue. Then it comes out 100. So I'll be catching things like these. Put that in your list of things to add to your schedule for correction, because every time now I think of something like this that I've explained many times, I look at Amy. Oh, do we have to cover this again? Okay, I don't know if you get fun. I know that I repeat things not because I forget I said them, but because it seems that some people haven't gotten them yet. And I see looks on people's faces like, oh, I didn't know that before. Even though I've said it 3 times, because I know in my own learning, I don't necessarily learn things the first time. If we learn things easily the first time, why is that usually? Sometimes we learn things easily the first time because anybody? If we learn something easily the first time that we hear it, what might be the reason for that?
It's new.
It's new? Well, everything is new in theory if we're learning it.
It's different from our old.
Okay, you're saying that it's unusual enough that it strikes us, and that's true about learning. Things that are really different from our experience, we'll remember them more easily, because other things, if they're similar to what we already know, we tend to mix them up and forget them, right? So that is one possibility. It's so unusual that we remember it because it's so odd. It's so unlike our previous experience. What's another reason we might remember when just hearing something once? And by the way, these points that we're bringing up now are important to those of you especially who plan to teach. Because if you want to make an impression that lasts, you should know what sticks. I read a book called Made to Stick, I think was the title, Made to Stick. I think that's what it was. And it tells all about what we remember best. So if you want to learn things and change habits, you have to remember things. And this tells you what kinds of things people remember best. This is especially designed for people who are running an ad campaign and they want to give a message that people remember. So if it's so unusual, you know, that it really sticks out in our mind, yeah, we'll probably remember it. What else? What's another reason?
We had a similar experience before.
Yeah, and that confirms it. or it explains it. That means maybe we've noticed something all our lives, but only half consciously. And suddenly somebody mentions it and gives it a name. You go, oh, that's what it is. I thought it was just me. But it turns out everybody has the same thing. We've given it a name, and the reason is because we've already experienced it and thought about it, so it's familiar to us already. And that's pretty much what I was after. In order to remember something, to understand it well enough to remember it, we need to have enough background. We need to have just the right number of steps that take us right to the doorway of learning the new thing. If we're missing those steps, like if we're trying to get from here, there are 2 steps here, and then there's a door up here on the 2nd floor. Can we get up to the 2nd floor? We have only 2 steps here, and then nothing, and then there's the 2nd floor doorway. We can't get up there unless you can really jump, and you might get hurt. So with learning, you have to have step-by-step background, or the teacher has to provide you with those steps to get you right to the doorway in order for you to understand it and then remember it. So in those cases, usually we have that background. It fits in with your background. You already have enough steps to understand it easily. Okay? So when something is too new and too different, we don't quite register it. We don't thoroughly understand it, and once we understand it, we may not keep it because it is too different from our previous experience. The reason we might remember some things is also a reason why we can't really accept it, because we were taught something else. We have habits that are blocking out the new information. And those habits are very, very powerful, as we've discussed before. So if those habits are blocking out something new, and this new thing you haven't totally embraced, you don't totally accept it yet. You've heard your teacher say it, you understand it cognitively, but you haven't embraced it, and your old habits are going to say, well, this is the way I've always done it, and then you forget it quickly. That's what I think happens when I do pronunciation corrections most often. Like 100, I think I've told you before in class last semester, 有人有印象吧? Except there's something more powerful than the new knowledge, which is your existing habits. And that's why when I tell it to you again, and Amy's going, oh, not again. The rest of you are saying, oh yeah, oh that's how it works. Oh, okay. And maybe the 3rd time you'll think, well, maybe I should change it. Often it's not until the 3rd time. And that applies to learning new vocabulary words. You'll hear people say that, like when you're 背单词 for the GRE or something. The first, the word is very strange. And then you hear it 2 more times, and then, hey, you start remembering it. So a lot of times when I repeat things, it's because you're still in that process of building up the background or dealing with your previous habits. Okay, excuse me, I've taken time away from this, but this is important to all kinds of learning. A lot of you are in the teaching program, and even for those of you who are not, we all need to know more about how we learn so we can learn more efficiently. And one thing I hope to make more efficient is when I make a correction that you can build steps leading to it, put it in your notes, and then the daily program, your weekly program, will help you work on the old habits. Okay, so 100. We only talked about the page number. Let's go. And we're on 139?
The 2nd paragraph.
Okay, go. And did you identify yourself?
Tina.
Okay.
The next step is to...
The next what?
Step. Step. Step.
Right. How do we know it's step and not step? There is a word step, by the way, but it's got an S on it. I've never heard step by itself. It's a part of the ear. 这是耳朵的一个地方，的一个 body part. It's called the stapes. So there is such a word. It would help to learn a little phonics, 自然发音. Because if you see A plus a silent E at the end, you know it's pronounced like the name of the letter A. But if it's just S-T, let's say it was A. How would we pronounce that? I don't think that's a word, but... Right, just like the word staff, for example, which is a word. That's the so-called short A in phonics, which is our 蝴蝶 A. You don't see an E at the end. And in addition, S, T, let's say it's EEP. We don't usually have a final silent E with E. We can, but we often have a double E instead, or we have an EA. For example, meet. Then it's going to be, so wait, a long E is what? E. But if it's only one E, it's going to be eh. So in the future, when you see just a single letter E and then a consonant, nothing else, usually it's going to be this. So for those of you who haven't learned phonics, how about if you do that yourself? We can't do it in class, it's too much, and it's not directly related to what we're doing. But phonics will really help you. It will save you a lot of bother. You won't have to go to the dictionary constantly. And you can guess sounds fairly correctly, at least part of the time. Let's go.
Is to learn
重来.
the next step. Step.
No. How do we pronounce this letter?
Step.
This symbol, step, that's right.
The next step. Step.
All right, what was that? That was habit. Habit is tough, isn't it? It is so hard to overcome because is it system 1 or system 2 that is deciding our behavior? System 1 is the automatic brain, system 2 is the analytic brain. So which part of the brain is usually helping us when we're reading? System 1, the automatic brain. So it will take a lot of work to get over that habit because you've probably been doing it many years. So you're going to have to put that in your notes, put it in your weekly program and work on it. Once more.
The next step
Good.
is to learn to superimpose this movement on a velar stop.
Okay, say Anna again.
On
Anna.
the
It sounds like Anna to me. It may not be wrong, but the vowel quality is somehow wrong. It sounds like you're saying Anna. Remember that when we are reading these short words like prepositions and we have after them. Is a vowel, so we can link. And to get rid of the ang problem, 这里不应该是 velar. We don't even say a nasal at all. We just say ah. And then where do we put the nasal? At the beginning of the next word. No nasal at all. It's fine. We do nasalize it, but if we don't nasalize it, nobody cares. So na. Everyone? Na. Yeah, nobody will say anga if you're saying na, ni na, nega na. Nobody would say ni nga, right? Nobody says ni nga. So you won't get it wrong. Ni na, na. And how about in, Not na. Got it? That's the formula. Put that down. Okay, sorry, Amy. But na, na, then you won't say anga and inga, and that's typical Taiwan English. Everyone? Na. Na. Very good. Once more.
on
There you go.
velar stop.
Velar stop.
Velar stop. Say the sequence arc.
Good.
Then say this sequence again. Very slowly. Again.
Good.
Very slowly.
Good.
Holding your tongue in the position for the
Position.
position.
Not position. Position.
Position.
You're saying posi. It's posi. Position.
Position
It's a little better, yeah.
for the closure at the end for the second or so.
At the end, for a second or so.
At the end for a second or so.
All right, and one more thing, everybody. What's wrong here? At the should be? At the, and there's a long pause there, even though those are sheets and very short. At the, and then there's and, so we need to say the instead of the. So at the end, and 有个 ye 的连音. Everyone, at the end.
At the end.
Good. At the end.
At the end.
That's good. Okay, Tina? Oh, 不对. I want you to do the part after closure.
The position for the position
That's better.
for the closure at the end for a second or so.
That was really good. One more thing. How do we say closure? How do we stress it? It sounds ridiculous, but k is a noun. Yes, you got it. Isn't that funny? Because k is not even a word. It's just a sound, but it's still a noun. So we would say for the k closure, for the k closure. Now that's something most teachers would not stop you for and point out. It's kind of crazy, but k is a noun. Go ahead.
Now say it again.
Okay.
And
Wait a minute. How
while-
about linking? Do you see a place where you should link?
say it?
Say it is good. Okay, one more linking after that.
Say it the again.
Okay. Can you put it in the phrase?
Now say it again.
Not say it. Don't put a false tap after say. The tap goes after or between it and again. Listen. Now say it again. Say it, say it, say it, say it. Now say it again. I'm being really picky with you this morning, okay? This will give you some material for your schedule, for your pronunciation correction schedule. Now say it again.
Now say it again.
Beautiful.
And while maintaining
I could see trouble before that one came out. This is typical Taiwan problem. All right, AI. For phonics again, if you see AI in spelling, usually it's pronounced right, exactly, you got it.
while maintaining
But you didn't say A, you said eh, you said men.
maintaining
Good.
the c closure.
There you go.
Do three things.
Good.
1. Make a glottal stop. 2. If you can, raise
If
your
you can,
if you can,
good.
raise your larynx. And 3. Release the c closure while maintaining the glottal stop.
I'm glad you stopped, but you can make it better. While
Maintaining
the first one is good, do the second one the same.
maintaining
Now the second one is good. Do both of them.
while maintaining
You're saying men. We want.
maintaining
First one is good. It's 顾此时比. You get this one right, and then the other one pops up.
maintain
Whenever you focus on one, the other one goes back to your old habit. Can you see what's happening? It's not something wrong with you. It's just what happens with people. So when you're paying attention to the first syllable, you're saying maintaining. Then the second one's wrong. Then I say, well, you have to get the second one too, and then you say maintaining, and you get the second one right, and the first one's wrong. But you need to concentrate on both this time because they're both AE.
maintain
I can tell exactly which syllable you're focusing on. Again?
maintaining
Did it. Okay.
the glottal stop. Don't worry about
Stop it, stops.
don't worry about
There's
step.
another stop.
About
Yes. 你们好烦哦。Try it again.
don't worry about step. Too much.
Good.
The important thing is
Important.
thing to concentrate on is having a glottal stop and a velar closure.
Velar
Closure going on at the same time.
at the.
Same time. Same
Yes.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And then releasing the velar closure.
And 再来一次 and what?
And then
Yes.
releasing.
The first time you said I heard and then releasing, it was just like the problem with what? 我们刚练了半天。100, then releasing 是一样的问题。And then?
Releasing the velar closure.
That's fine. And don't make the E too long. And I mentioned this in another class. It's not releasing, it's releasing. Anyway, S is not, it's not voiced, so it's releasing. And then releasing.
Releasing the
Do
velar
the whole thing.
closure.
And then releasing.
And then releasing
Good.
the velar closure before releasing the glottal stop.
All right, 2 things there. First of all, you see something in italics, right? When you see italics, what should you do? Stress. That means we don't normally mark stress in English writing, but when we really, really want to emphasize something, we often will either underline it, we'll use bold, or we use italics if it's in Shuati. So then releasing the, go ahead.
The velar closure.
The velar closure. Velar 只是一个形容词. This is not a compound.
The velar closure before releasing the glottal stop.
All right, and glottal stop is also a compound, like vocal folds. Glottal stop. All right.
The release of the velar closure
Velar closure. Remember, velar 就是形容词, yeah.
will produce only a very small noise, but it will be an will be an ejective.
Okay, pretty good. One thing I just noticed was, but it will be. Again?
But it will be.
Good, that's excellent. All right, I have a suggestion. Okay, mark this paragraph and then practice this because you've gotten a lot of suggestions. And if you fix the problems in this paragraph, I think it will help you in the future because we've already gone over this one. So just go over this on your own in your study time. Practice it and try to fix all of the things in your reading until they come naturally without thinking. Because right now, you have to think hard for each one. And when you get it, it's beautiful, it's perfect. But you have to think hard because it's not habit. So try to make all the corrections in this paragraph habit. Okay? And then it will help your other reading because some things will start happening naturally after you do that. We need to understand what we just read. Some of you can already make adjectives, some of you don't yet know how to make them. And this is giving you suggestions on how to do it. So he says, say first of all, ah. Everybody, ah. And this is T-Y Hua, but I can't resist. My son's name is Eric. And when my daughter was a baby, she called him Ak. Ak. So when I see Ak, I think of that. Ak. Now, say the sequence again very slowly, holding your tongue in the position for the K closure at the end for a second or so. All right, so Ak. Now, you're going to feel tightness in your tummy because you are keeping the air inside. You've got your vocal folds together. You're holding the air in. 在屏息. Everyone, Ak. Touch your tummy. Ak. 紧紧的吗? It should be. That's Ak. And then, what do you want? What should you do? Say it again while maintaining the K closure and while maintaining the K closure, the K closure. Do three things. First of all, you make a glottal stop, which we were already doing. And if you can, raise your larynx. Now, do you remember how to raise your larynx? We practiced last semester and this semester. How do you do it? It sounds like you did it. You're making these noises. You pretend that you're singing what? A very, very high note. So when you said ah, then pretend that you're singing a very high note and your larynx will raise. Ah. You can see it from the side. You can see it in my cheeks. Okay, but remember to breathe. Okay. So you raise your larynx and then you release the K closure while maintaining the glottal stop. So you don't let go of that glottal stop. 你还是屏息. To maintain a glottal stop, he means 屏息, to hold your breath. So you make an ak, you keep your glottis closed. Then you raise your larynx, sing a high note, pretend you are. And then you push out the air, but you can't let air go down your glottis. In other words, you can't open your vocal folds. 还是屏息就对了。屏着息就说一个 All right, so ah, ah, raise, push the air out without letting go of your air, 还是 holding your breath 的情况之下 ah. That's one way to do it. And I'm going to quickly tell you another method that I learned from a different book by William Smalley. And I think I will introduce this book very quickly since we're on the topic. On the index, or in the index, way at the bottom, you'll find a link called Book Nook. Okay, I'm not going to turn on the projector because we're not going to need it immediately. It's called Book Nook. B-O-O-K, book, and then N-O-O-K. Nook, Nook 是角落. Book Nook is just a list of phonetics works that I made a long time ago. I haven't added to it for quite a long time. But in that list, you will find a book by William Smalley. It's called A Manual of Articulatory Phonetics. It's from 1961. 1961. I used it way back when I first took phonetics for practical exercises. And there are also recordings for the book online. At the time, we used reel-to-reel tapes. 这种大盘的那种录音带，还不是卡式录音带，是那个之前。And it's still useful because he gives sounds of many, many different languages, exercises. One problem with the book is that he uses an Americanist system of transcription. He doesn't use IPA. So you have to learn a new system of transcription to use the book. But it's got wonderful examples and recordings. I've got the link also online. It's in the index for both Phonetics 1 and 2. It's a place in Belgium where they've put all of them online. And that was one place that gives a suggestion on how to make ejectives. And then there's another book in the same list. There's another book, and I'll find the book later because I don't see it right away now. And the suggestion that they give is pretend that you've got a little piece of leaf on your lips or on your tongue, on the tip of your tongue. 有时候你不小心就是好玩，你会嚼一嚼一片叶子 right? But then it doesn't taste very good, so you have to spit it out, right? 有时候是一片那个草，对不对？你会在那边嚼一下。But you want to spit it out because it doesn't taste that good. So pretend there's a little piece of grass on the tip of your tongue and you want to get rid of it. So what will you do? You'll go. Okay, you are now making a labiolingual ejective. Because you are still holding your breath, your glottis is closed, and you're trying to get that piece of grass off your tongue. So, everybody try it. So you're not going to go, you're not going to use long air. You're going to use a glottalic, egressive glottalic mechanism to get rid of that piece of grass. And that's basically how an ejective works. That is one kind of ejective. I don't know of any language that uses that one. However, it shows you how to make an ejective. So it's a labiolingual ejective. If you can do the same thing with the other stops, like and you've got it. Okay? So does everybody understand at least the theory of how to do it? You probably also should now be able to produce an ejective yourself. It says don't worry about step 2 too much, but I think you can all do step 2. That's about raising your larynx. And it says that you have to release the velar closure. Okay, let's see what it says so I don't get it wrong. Before releasing the glottal stop. So you have to go before you let air into your lungs. You still have to hold your breath while going. That's the point. So hold your breath and then try to make a K, but don't let go of your breath. You're letting new air into your vocal tract above your glottis, so you can keep on making them until your lungs get tired, until you use up the air in your lungs. Okay? Some of you have it, no problem. Is there anybody who's still having problems? Okay, okay. We'll try it, we'll work on it during break. But I'm sure you can all learn this. Let's go on to the next paragraph.
Yumi.
Okay.
Another way of learning to produce an ejective is to start from the...
Next, try to. It's second paragraph on 140.
Second paragraph. Next, try to produce a vowel after the ejective. This time, start from the sequence.
From, watch the M.
From the sequence. Aka. Say this sequence.
Oh, first of all, this, 吐舌头, and it's not stressed. Say this sequence.
Say the sequence slowly.
Right.
With a long.
All right, everybody. Ong, ah, 芋头, ah, long. All right, long is more British. Long is American.
With a long.
Good. Long.
There
we go.
Closure. Then.
Again. Then. Good.
During this closure. This closure. Make.
Okay.
Make a glottal stop.
Glottal stop.
Glottal stop.
Glottal.
Glottal stop.
Right.
glottal stop
Right.
and raise the larynx.
Good.
Then release.
Watch the N.
Then
Yeah.
release the closure while still maintaining
Good.
the glottal stop.
Good.
Finally, release the glottal stop
Stop.
and follow it with a vowel. You should have produced something like ak, ak,
Ak, ah.
ak, ah, ak, ah,
We're putting an extra glottal stop in. Ak, ah.
ak, ah. When this sequence becomes
Remember not to stress this
when
so
this
often.
sequence
Right.
becomes more fluent, so that there is very little pause between the release of the velar closure and the release of the glottal stop.
Release.
Release.
That's better.
It will be simply.
It will.
It will be.
It will, ma.
It will
It
be.
will. Stop. It stops. It will.
It will.
Right.
It will be simply an ejective followed by a vowel. Ak, ah.
Okay, you have the right idea. You will need to practice, but I think you're getting there.
Okay. There is, of
There
course.
is, of course.
There is, of course.
Right.
There is, of course, unless it is
Tell me.
still a glottal stop after the release of the velar stop and before the vowel. But unless it is exceptionally long.
Good. Say it again. I don't think you have it.
Long.
Long. Ang zang the ang.
Long.
There.
Long.
There we go.
We may consider it to be implied by the symbol for the ejective.
Good. Okay, you made a lot of good corrections. Maintained was amazing. That was great. Maintaining. You need to watch your TH. Th. Instead of l, you need to say the, this, that. But you're making a lot of really good corrections. What are they saying here? Try to produce a vowel after the ejective. Once you're able to make a k sound, we need to put a vowel after it. And ah is probably the easiest one to start with. So, ah, ah, ah. Everyone, ah. All right, slowly. I was doing it slowly. Ah. That's slow. But when you're doing it naturally, it's ah, ah. Good. Carol, you can help tutor anybody else who needs to work on it. You got it. Exactly. You do it really well. Ah. You got it. Ah. Ah. So remember that yap bing xi. You can't let your breath in. Just like when you're swimming, you have to hold your breath, right? And don't let your breath in. Ah, 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 ah. Okay? Carol, can you help anybody who needs help during break? Yeah, you've got it. You've absolutely got it. It says there is, of course, still a glottal stop after the release of the velar stop and before the vowel, but unless it is exceptionally long, we may consider it to be implied by the symbol for the ejective. So we don't have to write the glottal stop symbol, is what they're saying. All we need is that apostrophe, and that means it is an ejective. Ak, ah, ak, ah, ak, ah. Okay, and it's break time. First of all, as you know, we are keeping up the syllabus week by week, as in last semester, on the Phonetics 2 introductory page. And you can see that for today. Hand in your class notes, your corrected exams we've done. We're working on the book. In addition, here's a new assignment. I want you to read the newest 是的 article. It's not published yet, but the draft that I wrote has been approved by the editor. So this is a readable copy. It's pre-publication. Please read this one. It's all about what? Being nasals. And it's only part 1. There's a lot of things to say about nasals. I'm now writing part 2, but please read this one carefully. And I noticed that you have some issues. You fixed them well when I pointed them out, but there's some other ones that you maybe need to work on your own, because I'm not going to catch every one. So it will address a lot of those nasals issues. M, n, ng either get mixed up or omitted entirely often in Taiwan English. And it doesn't give as much detail as you're going to get in this class, but there may be some things we don't mention. There are a bunch of examples. And it will be on paper for you, all organized. Well, at least I consider it organized. So read it carefully, take notes on it, put the notes in your notes for next Monday. So notes on this article in your class notes for Monday, in addition to your schedule for what you're going to work on this week in your pronunciation. And I told you the no problem story, right? 讲过了吗？没有? Okay, so then I will tell you this story. It's at the beginning of the article. But I was listening to ICRT, and I was listening to an ad for 英文教材. And they had a little skit. It was an American guy talking over the phone to a Taiwanese on the other end. He's saying, and I need this translation ASAP. And then she says, no problem. And then make sure that you have it on my desk by Monday. Absolutely. And then they hung up. And then someone else in the commercial says, 哇，你好厉害，你不是英文很烂吗？你怎么都听得懂啊？ All right, it's about listening, but what was the problem with her speaking? Have the translation done ASAP. And she says, no problem. What was wrong? She didn't close her mouth, right. It should be no problem. And I thought this is a really wonderful bit of information I can use for the article. So I picked that up and used it because 究竟是英语教材的广告，你的那个演员怎么不纠正一下他们的发音？ It's not really a good ad for the 教材 if they're going to use the 教材 and say no problem and absolutely. What's wrong with absolutely? What's wrong with it? Can you describe the problem? Go ahead, Carol. There's an additional vowel, an epenthetic schwa, right? An epenthetic schwa that we don't want there, absolutely. She doesn't make it that clear, but there's a little hint of it, so it doesn't sound, the timing isn't quite right. So that article is about nasals. That's the first thing I want to mention. The second thing is a very brief book sharing. I think I've mentioned 赵元任中国话的文法. And when I went to 弱水堂 recently, I found this on the shelf. There is an abridged version of his original English, A Grammar of Spoken Chinese, translated and abridged by Lü Shuxiang. And if you don't know Lü Shuxiang, you should know of him. He's a very, very famous Chinese grammarian, one of the most famous. And then I don't know how good it is because the original is this thick in English, and this is only a tiny book. He says in his introduction that because the original book was written for foreigners, for non-natives of Chinese, there's a lot of information there that is not necessary for native speakers. So this is what he deemed more interesting and relevant to native speakers of Chinese. Now, whether it is or not, I don't know. I haven't read it yet. I only read a bit of the introduction. So I'll pass it around. If you are interested and you don't want the long English version, you can get this because it's very cheap and easy to get. The English original is out of print and you'd have to get, they should republish it. I don't know why they don't. But since they don't, you just do what you have to do. The other one I also have not read yet. I've only flipped through it. But my other main concentration in my own research besides phonetics is morphology. 构词学, 形态学. And there is not a lot written about Chinese morphology. I mean, in the mainland, there's a lot more than there is in the rest of the world. There are some things that have been written, but it still is not a highly developed field. And this one looked pretty good, like a pretty good introduction. So if you want to know more about Chinese morphology, you might have a look. It's called 汉语语速学通论. So this one looked pretty good. Anything about Chinese morphology, I usually will buy from 弱水堂. And if I haven't mentioned it before, don't be afraid of 简体字. Yes, you can read it. Don't tell me you can't read it. Of course you can read it. You don't have to like it. Nobody has to like 简体字. But when you need the information, you just use it, okay? That's those two things. In addition, I think that's all we need this for, so I'm going to put this back up. These are the books that I mentioned, and I couldn't find one of them originally on the list. It's number 3, William Smalley, A Manual of Articulatory Phonetics. This is also out of print, but there are many copies in the library of Taida. So if you want to borrow one, you can do that. The other one I was referring to is by Katrina Hayward called Experimental Phonetics. I got that on the 4th floor, I think, of the NTU library. And I'm not necessarily recommending it. It's an okay book. It's good enough. I mostly learned what I read in this book from other sources. There were a few new things in this book, but mostly, for example, I learned from Professor Johnson's book, Keith Johnson's book. I already knew a lot of the stuff in it, but it was good, a good review, and I picked up a few things. And the thing about the leaf on the tongue, I think it was William Smalley. Both of them have hints on how to make an ejective. The leaf on the tongue, I think, was William Smalley's idea. I think that's that. So we can continue. Are there any questions before we continue? Let's go. Next.
Miranda, another way of learning to produce an ejective is to start from the usual American and common British pronunciation of button
And that's not what they have written there?
as a button.
There we go. And also, it's not American, it's American.
American.
Mer.
American.
Okay.
Try starting to say button, but finish
Button.
button,
Yeah, if you say button, it's not going to work. It needs to be button here.
but finishing with another vowel instead of the nasal n.
All right, let's take it step by step. Everybody first say button. Button. Now we're not going to say the N at the end. We're just going to say and that will be easy because it's often pronounced that way in Taiwan English, button. Well, not so often, but you often leave off the nasals. So, try? All right. Sort of like butter in Cockney. Go on.
If you make sure you do include the glottal stop from a form of t,
Try it again. The glottal stop form of.
glottal stop form of
Of t.
t, the result will probably be but t. If you say this slowly, you should be able to convert it first into but.
But put a T after the glottal stop. The way I said it just now, there was no T. But after the glottal stop, put a T. So it's okay?
But then into but and finally altering the stress into but
Okay, sort of spit out the air in your vocal tract from the T before you make the vowel, because the vowel will turn it into pulmonic air. We want glottalic air. So, Again? That's it. That's it. Okay. So Miranda can now tutor as well. You've got it. Good.
Annie, eventually you should be able to be able.
Put it on your list. That's basic. That needs to be fixed. Can you write it down quick? I'll mark it.
You should be able to produce sequences such as pa, ta, ka, and perhaps cha, cha, sta as well. Practice producing ejectives before, after, and between a wide variety of vowels. You should also try to say the Lakota words in table 6.1. But if you find ejectives difficult to produce, don't worry.
How do we say that? Those last two words?
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Many people take years to learn to say them. Just keep on practicing.
Say an. You're saying 肮脏的 ang. We want 安全的 an. An. Yeah. Yeah. Not an, but Now the N is right, but watch the vowel. An. There, you got it. Good. Okay. Was that all clear? He was saying that once you know how to do it, once you get how it works, then you can try other consonants and vowels as well. So let's try the ones he gives us. Push out the air, and it won't make any sound at all. That's why they're voiceless. So, everyone, that's the kind of sound that children make when they're playing, right? That's an ejective. So if you don't have it yet, this might help you. It's not p. You can hear the breath. That's a totally different sound if it's lung air. This is just glottalic air. Okay, when you're done with that, then add the vowel. And you can make it even smoother and faster. Okay, and that's why they call it jinhoyin, because when you say them fast, what you're doing is you're just tensing up your vocal folds. So and that's why when I give the example from Georgian, like university, you can hear creaky. So basically, it goes down to your creak. That's how it sounds in running speech, is creaky. And let's try an affricate as well. Just like 喝茶的茶, but we're going to push the air out before we get to the vowel. And then s is hard because air comes out fast for fricatives. The air comes out fast. And you don't have very much air at your disposal when you're using glottalic air. You just have one little column of air there to use. So you have to make it fast and forceful, and then it's done. It's like fireworks. Boom, it's gone. It's gone, it's done. Okay, so Try to make this s with glottalic air. You don't need to put the vowel on yet. You can't keep it up very long. There's not much air yet, and there's not much air in there for you to use. And s takes up a lot of air. Very good. Okay. Then it says that we can try the Lakota words in table 6.1. Let's try those. And you've got, oh, you don't have the table, so I may have to turn on the projector again. Okay, those are the ones that we've already tried, so I'm not going to open that up. We did try them last time already, the o and uche, etc. We did those last time, so let's keep moving. We're moving on now to a new kind of exotic sound. And this one is harder. I'm going to warn you. Now don't make that make you feel like, oh, I'm going to give up before I start. But I'm just saying that if you don't get it right away, or even after a good bit of practice, don't be frustrated. Because implosives, at least in my experience, for some reason are just harder. Ejectives, most people get them maybe within a couple weeks. Some take longer. But for implosives, some people really have problems with these. These are also a glottalic. They use a glottalic airstream mechanism. Let's read about them first. Let's go.
It is also possible to use a downward movement of the
downward, Mom.
Downward.
Down. I want to hear the N.
Downward.
There we go. The first time I heard downward. Everybody listen to the difference. Downward, 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 downward. Can you hear it or not? Listen again carefully. Okay, Taiwan English first and my English second. Downward, 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 downward. Can you hear it or not? If you can't, please tell me, because then I'll do it slower and then we can try and listen to it more carefully. Can you hear it or not? Listen again. Downward, down. 强调一点的话就比较清楚, right? Down, there's no N. Downward, 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 down. Tongue is up there. Downward. Now, do you get the feeling? 这个好计较，这么小的东西怎么那么在乎? Do you have that feeling or not? Or you're used to this already? But we native speakers, we notice it right away, but we don't know why it sounds funny. We only know that downward sounds funny. Most native speakers cannot tell you that the N is missing. They don't know how to analyze it. They can only tell you downward does not sound native. It sounds like it has a foreign accent and it sounds odd. That's all they can tell you. You don't want to sound odd, right? And you want to learn how to pronounce clearly, have good enunciation. So put your tongue up and you've solved it. Downward. Downward. Not down. Down. Your tongue tip needs to be touching your alveolar ridge. Downward. Downward. Down. Not down. 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 中文的凹就可以了 I A O O 的凹 Downward. Good. Everybody, it's in your notes, please. Let it be in your notes. Okay, go.
It is also possible to use a downward movement of the larynx to suck air inward. Stops made with an ingressive glottalic airstream mechanism are called implosives.
All right, implosives. That's our new type of sound that we're going to learn. Implosives. And I think, did I put them up here? I didn't, and I will put them up today. And some people call them 吸入音, but it's not really the best translation because it's not just sucking air in, and it's not pulmonic, it's glottalic. We'll learn more as we go on. Let's continue.
In a production of implosives,
It's not z, it's z.
implosives, the downward moving larynx is not usually completely closed. The air in the lungs is still being pushed out, and some of it passes between the vocal folds, keeping them in motion so that the sound is voiced. Figure 6.3 shows the movements in a voiced bilabial implosive of a kind that occurs in Sindhi, an Indo-Aryan language spoken in India and Pakistan.
Pakistan.
Implosives sometimes occur as allophones in English, particularly in emphatic articulations of bilabial stops, as in absolutely billions and billions.
Okay. Now, I'm sure that this is 一头雾水. We're going to have to take it bit by bit. These parts we're going to have to take slowly. And instead of pushing the larynx up, pretending you're singing a high note, how do you push your larynx down? Pretend that you are singing a low note. So, when you start high and then push your larynx down, you're going to take that air in your vocal tract and you will suck it in. 因为你这样子喉头往下降的时候，就产生一个半真空状态. So in your mouth, sing a high note without singing. Now lower your larynx. There's going to be a space. Originally, I better use two hands. So originally, your larynx was here, and then you lower it to here. With the lowering of the larynx, there's going to be more space, right? And that means that we're going to have to suck some air in to fill up the space. Otherwise, it's going to be a partial vacuum, and there will be pressure, right? So that means we start out like this. We lower our larynx, air is going to get sucked in because we've got more space now. So that's the first part of how implosives work, but that's not the only thing that you do. The second thing is, going back to ejectives, are they usually voiceless or voiced? Voiced ejectives are really, really rare. I don't know of any language that uses them, but I've read about them. It's very hard to produce a voiced ejective because you've got your glottis closed. How can you voice it? So I don't know how it works, but I've read that there are some rare languages that use voiced ejectives. So let's just consider them as always voiceless for our purposes. Now, implosives are different. You're going down, and then you're going to produce a voice sound. Implosives are usually voiced. And I believe there are voiceless implosives, more common than voiced ejectives, but implosives are normally voiced. And it probably has to do with their origin. Remember, we had a special word for the origin of tones. Do you remember that word? Wow, good, you got it. Tonogenesis. That means the emergence of tones. Well, the emergence of implosives goes back to a very, very strong voiced stop. 就是那个 voicing 非常的强. Sometimes 它是强到那个喉头会下降，然后呢，空气吸进来 ，Bill， 它 变得非常的 voiced 以后，有时候那个喉头还会下降，然后吸一点空气进来，它是这样产生的。Originally, they were highly voiced sounds, very voiced sounds. That's how implosives, as far as we know, came into being. And that's why they're usually voiced. So, in addition to having your larynx go down and pulling in some and sucking in some air to fill the partial vacuum, if they are voiced, that means what? You now know that implosives are usually voiced. So therefore, that means what else is happening down there? That's right. Your vocal folds are vibrating. And if the vocal folds are vibrating, does that mean that we have a tight seal like we had with ejectives? No. They're opening and closing. So we have, that's why shiru-in is not such a good translation for them, because you do have air being sucked in, but at the same time you have, what kind of air? Pulmonic air, lung air, coming out to make a voice sound, to make a voice stop in this case. So we've got air going in both directions. And that makes them a little confusing and hard, but you can learn it. Okay? And I'm not really good at them. I can produce them, but I usually make a gulping sound. 如果 if it's a native speaker who has implosives, they don't have that gulping sound. They sound much more natural. And if you're just listening to the recording, it's very hard to hear that they are different from regular voice sounds. They just sound like very voice sounds, usually. I will play some examples for you. Use earphones and you will hear it more clearly. So even though I will play them now, you will probably need to go home and use earphones and listen yourself. But even so, it's not that easy to hear it. But because I'm not a native speaker of one of those languages, and I'm sort of mamahuhu at it, I make a gulping sound, which makes them very clear. So you'll learn a clearer version from me that you'll have to tone down if you learn one of these languages like Sindhi. The way it works is, for example, for ba, it's ba, ba. You can hear ba. My lips are making too much noise. They shouldn't make that much noise. Ba, You can hear, if I'm voicing, if I'm making a voice sound, my vocal folds are vibrating, and then I'm lowering my larynx, that's the sound we make. And close your mouth so that you don't have air coming in and you'll hear it. Just like you're swallowing without opening your mouth. And you can hear the pitch going down, right? And don't say that means your nose is open. You can't open your nose. Everybody just plug your nose like you're gonna go swimming. And then close your mouth, and then lower your larynx while you're making a voice sound. Yeah, be careful about pinching your nose. That will make sure that you don't have nose air coming out, but you might pop your ears. So be very careful. Be very, very careful when you're doing that, because Taiwanese students tend to use nasal sounds. And if you're using a nasal sound and plugging up everything, you will either suck your ears in or blow them out, making some of these sounds. So don't do that. Don't harm your ears. So if you know how to swim, if you've been underwater and you don't want air or water going into your nose, you have to plug your nose like this, right? This is what you do when you're going to go underwater. That's what you need to do. No air is coming in through your nose. Okay? Sounds like I have a cold. We talked about that last semester. So you plug your nose, close your mouth, have a little air ready. Okay? That's the beginning of an implosive. Okay? If you're having trouble, 没有关系，可以练习. And those who know how to do it, again, Carol and anybody else who's mastered it, I just noticed Carol because she's right here and I can hear her really clearly. But the rest of you who've mastered it, if any of you need help, get help from a classmate who can do it. So now we're going to superimpose a stop on that, and it will be B. So ba, ba. So while the larynx is going down, you can hear that pitch going down, but it's also creating a partial vacuum. So if you open your mouth, air is going to rush in, and that will create the implosive. Ba, 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 ba. In addition to Sindhi, there are quite a few languages in India, I believe, in that area that use them. And also Vietnamese has this sound, but it's allophonic, according to what I know. I asked a Vietnamese, and he never heard this sound. So not everybody has it. But I have heard other Vietnamese who made the sound. Clearly, I heard it. So, and I've read also in the literature that it's allophonic in some varieties of Vietnamese. So ba, ba, ba. So try to make that sound and then add a b to it. Ba, ba, ba. All right, practice that. That's an implosive, and you can do it with other stops as well. Da, da. Okay, you're using your tongue to block your mouth now instead of your lips. For B, it's bilabial, so it's easy to close up your mouth because you've got your lips together. Ba, ba, Make the sound first, and then open your lips. Everybody, ba, ba. Okay, you can do it with D, da, da. So I have a strong sound, which native speakers usually don't have, but that shows you how to do it. Excuse me. Da, 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 da. All right, G is harder because that space left to work with is very small. Ga, ga, ga. Okay, those are implosives. Okay, they're a little harder, aren't they? Okay, I warned you. But practice it and you'll get it. So if you really strongly voice a stop, like a B, you may sometimes inadvertently, 就不小心的, produce an implosive. And that's why they gave this example. And we voice our stops strongly, for example, when we're broadcasting the news. I say we, I don't broadcast news, I broadcast other things. But normally in speech, it was Amy who read just now, right? Right. And you said billions and billions without voicing, which is the normal way we say it. In the news, though, we tend to emphasize theoretical standard features. Like in the news in Taiwan, you still hear 支持师, right? 大家知道. You will hear that in the news, right? 播新闻的时候. Sometimes, yes, sometimes people are more relaxed. But you will still hear 支持师 in the news in Taiwan. Well, in the news in English-speaking countries, we often have strong voicing on initial stops, which we don't have in conversation so much. So they will say billions of dollars, instead of the way I normally say it, which is billions of dollars. Big difference, right? So billions of dollars have been spent on the project. Billions of dollars, and that way I sound more like a broadcaster, because they will emphasize these theoretical underlying features that we don't necessarily use so much in conversation. And if they really overdo it, billions of dollars, billions, they may produce an implosive. That's what they're saying in this line. 可以吗? Let's go on.
Bella. In all the implosives, we have measured the articulatory closure. Articulatory closure. In this case, the lips coming together occurs first. Good. The downward movement of the glottis, which occurs next.
Which occurs next.
All
right, if you say which occurs next, then next didn't get any stress, but next is really important here. So we say which occurs next with continuation rise, stress and continuation rise. Which occurs next.
Is like that of the piston. A piston that would cause a reduction in the pressure of the air in the
Slow down just a little bit and make your thes a little clearer. I know you're saying the thes, but they're really short. They can be a little longer. So you can say a reduction in the pressure of the air, rather in the pressure of the air. I barely heard the. So in the pressure of the air.
In the pressure of the air in the oral tract. Oral tract. Good. But it is a leaky piston.
But it is not a content word.
But it is a leaky piston in that the air in the lungs continues to flow through the glottis.
Okay, stop a minute. You read it correctly. Piston is a 实词, but it's repeated. But it is a leaky piston. You read it exactly right. Okay, go on.
As a result,
stress is on. Let's just go over this quickly because a lot of you still have trouble with where the continuation rise goes. Where do we put the continuation rise at the end of an intonation group? Where do we put the continuation rise? What syllable do we put it on? Louder? Is it the last syllable in the phrase? For example, if we added 2 function words to this phrase, your phrase is as a result, right? If we added of this, as a result of this, we could do that. That would also be grammatical. Where does the continuation rise? Does it move because we've added words? This is really an important point. This really should go in your notes, because I think most people here, first of all, they don't know about continuation rises, and once they learn about them, they don't know exactly where to put them. But there's a very easy rule for them. And you actually know it implicitly, but you maybe haven't really made the connection. If I put the continuation rise on this, which is a function word, it would be as a result of this. We could do that if we wanted to emphasize this. That's possible. But that's not what we normally do, because this is a function word and it has no stress. So what do? We find the tonic stress. Remember, the final stress syllable is the tonic stress. So that's an easy way to know where to put the continuation rise. It starts on the tonic stress. No matter what you've got there, if it's a phrase, a sentence, a compound, just a few words, the tonic stress is where your continuation rise starts. And it can also finish there if you have no further words. So for example, as a result, we have to put that whole little song on zalt, on that one single syllable. As a result, salt, it's all on that one little syllable. If we put of this after it, then what do? As a result of this, we put the tail of the continuation rise on those function words. But salt is the tonic, and that's high. So we can't say the continuation rise goes on the last word. It starts on the tonic stress, which is the last stress syllable in the intonation group. As a result of this, everyone, as a result of this, as a result, all right, these two actually form a very good contrastive pair. So if you ever need to teach anybody about this, keep this. You can say it's not the last word, but the continuation rise spreads over the remaining words in the intonational group. So as a result, go ahead, Bella.
As a result, the pressure of the air in the oral tract is not affected very much. In a plosive, but there is, of course.
There is, of course.
There is, of course.
Is, I just told you not to stress, but now we do stress it because in the preceding sentence, he just said, 你的口腔内的气压会不会很大的变化？前一句是说它不会有什么很大的变化。Why? Because we have air coming in and also air going out. So that way, 截长补短, they sort of balance each other out. Okay, 互相抵掉这样子。But here it says, although they don't affect the oral tract pressure, the air in the oral tract, the air pressure in the oral tract is not affected very much, there is, now we stress it because, with, contrast with what? Is not. 前面说 is not, 可是确实有，还是有, and you will lengthen 有 in Chinese. 没有这回事，不过还是，这件事情还是有。You will put a glottal stop there and lengthen it in Taiwan Mandarin. So we need to stress it here to show the contrast. There is, of course,
an increase in the pressure of the air in the vocal tract.
Mm-hmm.
When the articulatory closure is released, there is neither an explosive nor, in a literal sense, an implosive action.
All right, this is going to get confusing. Implosives are hard anyway, but they get confusing because we've got air in two directions. It says in a plosive B. He's making a comparison, an implosive with a regular plosive. So with ba, the air pressure stays about even. Air is coming in, air is going out. With a normal plosive, we do have an increase of air in the vocal tract. Ba. We've got an increase of air pressure you can feel. Make a very strongly voiced ba. Try. Ba. Ba. So there you've got an increase. He's contrasting the implosive with the regular plosive. That's what's going on here. And then he says, when the articulatory closure is released, there's neither an explosive nor, in a literal sense, an implosive action. So 你完全照字面的话，它既不是外爆，又不是内爆， because 它互相平衡过来，等于是这样子。Don't worry too much about the contradiction. It will make sense once you know how to do it. You'll be able to feel it. Let's go on.
Instead, the particular quality of the sound
Peculiar.
The peculiar quality of the sound arises from the complex changes in the shape of the vocal tract and in the vibratory pattern of the vocal folds.
Very good. It's the way the vocal folds vibrate, and it's the shape of your vocal tract when you're producing the sound that gives us this unusual twang. 它有一种很特别的一种共鸣，那个就让我们知道这个音是一个 implosive， 而不是一个普通的 plosive。而不是说那个，既不是这个音，这个声音，也不是啊，不是这样子，而是说，因为你发这个音的时候，你的发音器官都有一个很特别的一种摆法，一种位置，一种 shape， 那个它的那个共鸣会让你知道，哎，这个是一个 implosive。That will take experience. Okay, next.
In many languages, such as Sindhi and several African and Native American languages, languages.
Good.
Implosives contrast with plosives.
Contrast. Natives will say contrast as well. We don't really pay much attention to this distinction, but we're going to be really rigorous here.
Implosive contrasts with plosives. However, in some languages, for example, Vietnamese.
Okay, because the tonic is on ease. Vietnamese.
Implosives are simply
R.
variant.
Was it R? R.
Oh, R. Implosives are simply variants. Alpha.
Variants.
Variants.
All right, when it's an important word, you need a nice tonic there. Implosives are simply variants, allophones. 它是个同位语.
Implosives are simply variants, allophones.
Variants, pause. Remember that 标点符号 usually tell us to pause normally. And this is the case here. 这是个同位语. So you have to give it sort of 类似的一个地位. So implosives are simply variants, allophones.
Implosives are simply variants.
Not var.
Variants. Allophones of voiced plosives.
Voiced plosives.
And are not contrast with low sounds.
And are not in contrast with those sounds.
Oh, are not in contrast with low sounds.
Okay, that's what I just mentioned. In Vietnamese, they do have ba and they have ba, but they're the same sound. So you can say ban or ban, it doesn't matter. It's just a variant. It doesn't mean everybody has it, but if you hear it, it doesn't create a new word. It's not a separate phoneme. Okay?
The top line of table 6. The top line of table 6.2 illustrates implosives in Sindhi. The symbols for implosives have a small hook on the top of the regular symbol. For the moment, we'll consider only the first and the second rows in table 6.2, which illustrate ingressive glottalic stops, implosives in the first row, contrasting with the regular pulmonic plosives. Pulmonic.
Pulmonic. Right.
Pulmonic plosives in the second row.
Okay, let's stop there for a minute. Look at this table at the bottom of the page. A regular plosive is written like this, and implosives will have a little hook to the right. So that's easy to remember. And when you're writing it, you can just write it like this. So that's b, b. And then you can see for D, it's the same pattern. This is a regular D, and then you just add a hook to it to make it implosive, and you can write it like this. Well, write it like this maybe is a little better. Let's listen to these files. This is the first one, upper left-hand corner. If you just listen to it without this kind of preparation, you would just hear a B, right? Bunny. But it's bunny, bunny. Okay, listen again.
bunny, bunny, bunny,
Can you hear that kind of sound? If you listen carefully, you can hear it. Bunny, bunny. Listen again.
bunny, bunny, bunny.
It's funny, and when I hear this, I have another memory. This time it's not about my kids, though. It's about Mr. Casey. Mr. Tim Casey, do you know him? Some of you had him for a teacher. Our 教师研究室 used to be next to this room downstairs. And so after class, Mr. Casey said, Karen, what was all that bunny, bunny, bunny stuff in your class? Because I could hear it really clearly in the office. So I think of that every time.
Bunny,
I feel, Tim, what is that? What is that?
bunny, bunny, bunny,
Let's compare it to the one right below it. Now, it's not a good minimal pair because it's got a U at the end, banu. But see if you can hear the difference.
bun,
Banu. It's still very voiced, but it's no longer an implosive. I'll play it a few times. Don't repeat. Just listen carefully.
bun, 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 bun,
Banu. It's very strongly voiced,
bun,
but it's not an implosive. Let's go back to the implosive.
bunny, bunny, bunny,
Implosive.
bun, bun, bun,
They sound really close, don't they? This one's really hard to hear. But listen to the bunny one a lot, and you'll get a feeling for that kind of resonance in the vocal tract. 有一种 twang. 有一种特别的共鸣. And it won't come fast. It will take a little time. But a lot of these things will require time because they're new. And I think that I didn't quite finish my idea first hour. When I said when something is hard to learn, I started it. When something is so new that it goes against things you've learned before, people will usually do what? If it's so new, it's so different from everything you've been taught before, what is the normal human reaction to ideas like that? Right, you reject it. You just reject it. You go, no, I learned something different. That can't be right. That's not what I learned. Isn't that what most of us do? Like when I try to tell you new ideas about 注音符号, everybody's up in arms. No, 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 it's this way. I learned that in first grade. And I've had that experience with many things because in my years of experience teaching, I've learned some things that I have not seen in the literature. And when I try to tell other people about them, even people in my field, they go, oh, that's interesting, and then they forget it. Like, for example, the echo method. The echo method is revolutionary. That's something really new, I mean, really different. You can't say it's new because it's always been in all humans, the possibility. But people have not really mentioned this as a way to improve language learning. So when I mention it, they go, hey, I'm going to try that. Or else they go, oh, that's interesting. And then they totally forget about it, and people do things the old way. So I've had that experience many times with many ideas that I've had myself and listened to the reaction, even to people who are experts. That's usually what happens. And over time, if you persuade a lot of people and they find, oh, this is useful, I'm going to do that. Finally, if you get a momentum going, then if a lot of people already accept it, then maybe people will pay attention to it and consider it seriously. So for you yourselves in the future, if you're going to be a researcher, you will find the same thing. If you come up with something really new, really original, look forward to a very difficult time in telling other people about it. Okay? And for any new idea that's quite different from what you've had before, and these things also require coordination of your brain with your articulatory muscles, it's going to take a while. And I posted an article on NTU Phonetics, if you saw it, about why tongue twisters are so difficult. Did you see that one? And they talk about these are the finest movements that we make in all of our body. Remember we said that about the tongue, 是那个全身最灵活的一种肌肉. Those movements are so very finely timed and coordinated. The brain is really amazing that it can actually pull that off. Okay, so it's something that's really, really difficult to do, but we managed to do it somehow. And here with this, you're going to have to learn some new movements, some very fine new movements. All right, and let's just finish the paragraph. That's our bell. It's okay that we only got that far because each day we're getting a new thing. Last time was ejectives. This time was implosives. And that's actually quite a lot for one class. Let's just finish the paragraph.
Cindy has unfamiliar places of articulations illustrated.
Your Esma.
Articulation.
Articulation. It's R.
Articulation.
Right.
Illustrated in the third and fourth columns, which we will consider in chapter.
Not con.
Which we will consider. Which we will consider in chapter 7.
Good.
The lower rows in the table illustrate phonation types. Phonation types that we will consider later in this chapter.
So we're not going to spend time on those, but we will come back to them in the future because we're going to learn a lot of the things going on in those other examples that we're not ready for right yet. Right now, we're just mainly interested in implosives. So please mark that. It's the first complete paragraph on 142, and then Vivian is next, right? All right, and you will go next time. Let's just remind ourselves of what you need to do. What do you need to do? There's a new article you need to read. It's 是的 article number 77, which is about nasals. And you also, on your own, need to practice what two kinds of airstream mechanisms? Ejectives, and now implosives. Try it on your own. Listen to the audio files and see if you can learn how to produce them yourself. And have a look at the Book Nook if you want to know some other books. If you want more practice in unusual sounds, the William Smalley book is really interesting. Okay, take good notes, and I want you to actually execute the plan that you've made for yourself, working on correcting whatever it is you're focusing on this week. And then on Wednesday, we will go over your summaries of vowels and consonants, chapter 1. Okay, we'll see you on Wednesday.